Hi everyone, happy March. I read 18 books in February, which was honestly an insane pace for me. There are only 3.5 weeks in February this year, so I read like 5 or 6 books a week. But I had a really good reading month. I feel like I read a lot of really interesting books that I'm excited to talk about. Hero, you want to say hi? Hi! Can you see him? Oh, he's such a cutie. So the first book, one of my favorite books that's ever going to mean anything to me, The Winners by Frederick Bachman, which is Beartown number 3. Beartown is my favorite series of all time, and I was so excited. I've just been postponing it, I think mostly because I truly don't want the Beartown series to be over. Bachman, my favorite thing about his writing is that he does such a masterful job of creating such a complex cast of characters, like giving every single person a very distinct personality without compromising on his setting or his storytelling or the writing itself. He does such a beautiful job of building such unique characters that you get to know so well. And Beartown was just another example of why Bachman is my favorite author ever. It was heartbreaking and beautiful, and everything about it I loved. So easy 5 stars for me. Even before I picked it up, I knew it was going to be 5 stars. I will be very hard pressed to find a series that I like as much as I enjoyed Beartown. It's about a hockey town, but that just doesn't even begin to scrape the surface. It's so much. It's about community and hope and perseverance. God, he does such a beautiful job of encapsulating the imbalance of power and how that can trickle down to even like the smallest people of a community. First line of the whole entire series is, late one evening toward the end of March, a teenager picked up a double-barreled shotgun, walked into the forest, put the gun to someone else's forehead, and pulled the trigger. This is the story of how we got there. Isn't that crazy? Beartown has my whole heart. My cat is trying to drink my coffee. There he goes. I think I want to do a reading vlog of rereading that series because it is my favorite series of all time. Then I started the Magnolia Parks series, which has easily become, I wouldn't call it a lifetime favorite, but it's so good. I'm obsessed with all the characters in this series. I think Jessa Hastings does such a great job of making very interesting people and very compelling relationships. The Magnolia Park series is about Parks and BJ are absolutely in love with each other, so much so that they've entangled themselves in one another and their relationship, and it gets to the point where it's like an obsessive love that it's so unhealthy for them. It's like a car crash that you can't look away from. But I gave this 4 stars. It is absolutely worth the read. I think you have to go into it knowing that Magnolia Parks and BJ are toxic to one another. This is not a romance, but it's a love story, if that makes sense. Do you want to read it? What are you doing? The second one, Daisy hates. This relationship, I think, objectively is so much more enjoyable to read than Magnolia Parks, because even though you're rooting for all of them, even though you're rooting for all the characters in these stories individually, I wouldn't say that I was rooting for Magnolia and BJ to work out, especially in the first one. Christian is one of the really close friends that you learn about in Magnolia Parks' books. So you get kind of a deep dive into the side character Daisy and Christian, and you absolutely fall in love with every single character in this book. I love Daisy. She's such a badass. And Christian, I think, is a sweetheart, and her brother Julian. Everyone is so likable, and you're genuinely rooting for the relationships in this book to work out. Please don't eat this book. I love it too much. And then Magnolia Parks 3, you go back to Magnolia and BJ's relationship. I loved this book because you really get to know the friendship dynamic. You get to see a lot more of them, and they're genuinely hilarious. Like, there are some moments where I was like, oh gosh, you guys are so funny. You can really see how they evolved and matured from this book to this book, especially BJ's character. He grew so much, and he actively made an effort to be a better guy for Parks. in his mindset. Maybe that didn't really come through his actions. The whole series is just so addicting to read. You really don't want to put them down. I will say by the third book, the whole back and forth between BJ and Magnolia get a little repetitive. Like, oh my gosh, BJ is talking about another woman in a bar and Parks happens to walk behind them. So she hears all of it and then she storms out of the club, and it's like, okay, we've definitely seen that before. The whole series is emotionally exhausting in the best way possible. Like, I love every second of it. These books do deserve the hype that it's getting. I'm definitely going to be picking up the fourth one soon, and I know that the fifth book is coming out, I think this July. If you hear my dog and my cat fighting, they're just being besties. And I read 5 Survive by Holly Jackson, and Holly Jackson is one of my favorite authors right now. I'm trying to get more into thriller / mystery. Hello, are you okay? Oh, there he goes. Oh. The reason why I gravitate towards Holly Jackson is she's predominantly YA, and I'm a weenie when it comes to scary stuff, so I've been kind of trying to dip my toe into it, and YA is kind of that perfect balance where it's not super creepy, but it still really keeps you on your toes. 5 Survive is about this group of 6 kids who go on a road trip and get stuck in the middle of nowhere, and you find out that them getting trapped there is actually planned, and they're just a web of secrets that you have to go through. You kind of have to flesh out whose fault it was, and only 5 of them survive, so you're constantly like guessing, and I think that's like the fun of thrillers. You're like never really sure where the story's going to pivot. I gave it 4 stars. I don't think I necessarily liked any of the characters, especially Oliver, but I think he was purposely written to be an antagonist that you don't like. You end up hating Oliver. He's an awful guy. The cast of characters weren't necessarily like, it was hard to sympathize for them, but I did like Red, and I loved her relationship with her best friend. I don't remember the best friend's name because I read 18 books this month. But overall, I definitely really liked it. Then I moved on to read Truly Madly Guilty by Leanne Moriarty, and I could go my whole life without reading it and I would be absolutely fine. I gave it 3 stars because the writing itself is very good, and there's definitely some dry humor, but not enough for it to be worth for what it is. It's such a fat book. Clementine and Erica, who are friends, they both have husbands, and there's like another couple, they're neighbors, and they all go to this barbecue. Shit goes down at the barbecue, so the first 50% of the book, you don't know what happens. The rest of the 50% is you, as a reader, finally understanding why these characters are tiptoeing around each other, what happened at the barbecue, how they're moving forward from it. It wasn't predictable, but that doesn't mean it was good. I didn't really connect with anyone. I just wanted to like shake them, like be better. I also read The Bodyguard by Catherine Center, which is a very lighthearted, cutesy romance. God, I forget his name. Nathan? Jack? I think her name is Hannah. Hannah is a bodyguard for this celebrity due to stalkery reasons, and for like other reasons they have to pretend to fake date instead of have that like traditional professional bodyguard relationship. And I thought it was so sweet. There were some moments that like genuinely had me like giggling, like she gets a piggyback ride. Oh, it was really sweet. I understand the criticisms that this book gets because Hannah, the main character, is made out to be this girl boss professional bodyguard, and she's definitely not. Through the whole book, it feels like she doesn't really know anything about how to be a bodyguard. So you definitely have to suspend your belief a lot. Even at the very butt end of the story, I feel like the whole book just goes off its rocker. Where did that come from? But even so, I really enjoyed it. I think the romance is worth it. They had chemistry right off the bat that I really enjoyed reading about, and it was a really lighthearted, fun read. I also read Kiss Her Once for Me by Allison Cohen, I think is how you say it. I read The Charm Offensive, which I think is a pretty popular book talk book, And that did not do it for me at all. I felt like the pacing was really whack. It is about Ellie and this girl named Jack who have this like magical one night stand, but they end up not speaking for a really long time until Ellie starts fake dating this guy named Andrew. And then boom, you find out that Andrew and Jack are related. So there's like this weird family dynamic that you have to kind of sink your teeth into, and it's super awkward, and that awkwardness makes the book hilarious. Oh my god, I would just die if I was in Ellie's situation. I had a good time reading about it. It was a sapphic romance. Definitely I enjoyed. Again, it was a lighthearted read, and I really appreciated how it ended, the resolution. I'm not going to spoil anything. So definitely a 4-star read that I would recommend. I read A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. I don't even really want to talk about this book. It was awful. It follows Crew and Ren, and I don't even remember. I think Ren is the girl and Crew is the dude. The dude is like the worst human being ever alive. Misogynistic, manipulative, perverted. Main girl, she's so two-dimensional. She's just written as a walking pair of boobs, and that's about it. The only reason why I finished A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime is because I needed to know how the male love interest is redeemed, and he never is. He just continues to be a shit human being. A 2-star read. I would give it a 1-star, but I don't like 1-starring books that I finish. I think 1 stars are reserved for like, I don't even think this book was worth reading or finishing. The lowest of the lows, 2 stars. I don't know how that book is so popular. And then I read Stars Collide. It was an ARC because I recently signed up for NetGalley. You can write reviews in exchange for like advanced copies of books. I thought it was a pretty cute sapphic romance. You follow Eden and Anna, who are singer celebrities. Anna is like an up-and-coming celebrity, and Eden has been in the game for a while, and they've got this budding romance. Anna is a very charming main character. She is like consistently throughout the book is like very self-aware, checking in with herself, setting her own boundaries, which I absolutely loved her as a main character. Eden also is pretty cute. She's in her 30s. In a lot of queer romances, if you find someone later in life discovering their sexuality, it's going to be through a side character or the main character's parent or something like that. Whereas in Stars Collide, this character is in her 30s and she is finally accepting her sexuality. So I thought that was so refreshing and sweet. I really liked how that was handled. But at the end of the day, I felt like Stars Collide was a pretty predictable read. Like, it definitely wanted to put it down and pick up a Magnolia Parks book just because it doesn't have that addictive quality about it. That's not to diss the writing or anything. I think the writing was totally fine. The plot lines, like, you kind of were expecting everything that happens to happen. So I gave it 3 stars. I also acknowledge that, especially with queer romances, I want to see more very predictable, sweet, happily ever afters for sapphic romances and for people who look like me and are like me. I think it's really sweet that young people have these kinds of books available to them. I didn't really get to read about girls liking girls, so I think that was sweet. I also read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace, which I loved. I was so pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it. You follow Stasi and Nathan, and like, surprise, surprise, like figure skater, ex-hockey player have to share a rink and get along. It was so cute. They're so good for each other. Nathan is the epitome of a man written by a woman. That man, oh my God, he's so hot. And I liked how there was not just their romance. There's a lot going on with like Stassi's parents, and there's a side character named Aaron who we all hate, who caused a lot of drama. The male friendships in the hockey team was really refreshing to see. I love all men written by Hannah Grace. I will definitely be picking up her other romances. The Dead Romantics. I have a bone to pick with the Dead Romantics. 2-star read. It was one of the most infuriating reads I have read in so long. You follow Flo. If she didn't drink rum and coke throughout the book, you would think she's 16. She's so emotionally stunted. and very immature for her age. She can't communicate to save her life. She simply avoids all conflict. She's thirsting after this ghost named Ben. And he's a ghost. He's a ghost. I don't know. Maybe this just didn't really do it for me because at the end of the day, Ben is dead. She was like, oh, he's off limits. Like, I can't think about him like that. I'm like, no, you can't. He's dead. He's a ghost. You literally... She was thirsting after his ghostly forearms. Like, that was something in the book that I remember distinctly. And I was like, what is going on? It was just too ridiculous for me to take seriously. You don't really get to know Ben. It's just this ghostly vessel for Flo to fix her communication problems. And even then, I feel like by the end, she doesn't. She's supposed to be a novelist, but I hated this book. I finished what I talk about when I talk about running, which is a memoir / collection of essays by Murakami. And the biggest reason why I wanted to pick this book up in the first place is because Anna Wallace Johnson on BookTube, I found her through her The Secret History locations video, and I love her channel. I feel like she articulates herself so well, and she said that this was one of her favorite nonfiction books. I wanted to give it a try, especially because Murakami's fiction is so popular. Heard both very positive and very negative things about his writing. Kind of wanted to get a peek into who the author is as a guy before looking at his fiction. I will say I think it was too dry and technical for me to personally connect with it. He talks a lot about running, obviously, and I have not exercised since 2017. So I don't really feel like I was the right audience to be reading this book. He comes off as a very normal guy, bar owner turned novelist turned long distance runner. It was interesting to see the mundaneness of it all, but I don't quite think it was very inspiring. He chalks everything he does just because he wants to do it. So then he does it. That I've heard his fiction writing is misogynistic. There were some really weird comments about young women that Murakami would make in this book. In the middle, he makes comment about how when he's running in the mornings, he sees young women run past him and they're very beautiful. He describes them as the freshmen in college at the university that he teaches at, talking about his students in a really weird way that made me uncomfortable. I hated that. And then he also does the same exact comment in the author's note. It was just so misplaced and it really rubbed me the wrong way. So 3 stars. Then I read Killjoy by Holly Jackson, which is a prequel to the Good Girls Guide to Murder series, which I loved last year. It was an arc. I think it got published a couple days ago on February 28th of 23. It's a very short novella. I think it's only 100 pages, so you can read it in an hour or two. Her and her friends do this fun murder mystery, so you kind of get to fall back into Pip's investigative journey and how she looks at the world. And Dial A for Aunties. I wanted to like what this author was doing. There were definitely some cultural references because the main family is Chinese and Indonesian, I believe. The aunts, there are 4 of them, and they're called literally big aunt, little aunt, or youngest aunt. I'm Chinese, so I literally call my family that as well. Oldest aunt, my Tuagim, and that literally translates to big aunt or oldest aunt. So I get what she was trying to do, but I think the execution of it fell flat. It just felt pretty stereotypical. They're all given a distinct character trait, and then the whole book, that's their whole personality. The side characters being two-dimensional, the main character Medi and her love interest are the flattest characters I have ever read about. No character growth, no chemistry between the two. Their romance was not alluring or interesting at all. There were so many plot holes in the book because it's about a murder that's just so nonsensical that everything that happens in the book is what is going on? I gave it 3 stars because at least I was entertained enough to keep reading and finish the book. The whole book was just so ridiculous. I read My Favorite Half-Night Stand by Christina Lauren. I'll say it right now. Christina Lauren have to be self-proclaimed horse girls. There's no doubt. Because I read Something Wilder by them a couple months ago, And that was definitely like a horse girl fever dream. It was such an odd book. There were so many guns, so many horses. That was such a weird book. And then my favorite Half Night Stand, literally the first line, the way you learn about the main character, she's like talking about how one of her main interests is female serial killers. And so you start off the book, you know, those girls in 4th grade that are super obsessed with horses. Well, like, my thing is female serial killers. What is with this horse girl thing? They have to like horses. So I gave it a 3 stars. It wasn't life-changing. It was kind of weird because there was this digital relationship that was going on completely separate from the platonic friendship / budding relationship they had in real life. And I feel like it wasn't really meshing well at all. I didn't love how these best friends were okay with lying to one another. I think Christina Lauren's books generally are good, but they're also just like whatever to me. It's not like I hated any of the characters or they were unlikable. I just don't really think I understood the dynamic. The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. Again, it was a whatever romance. Nothing groundbreaking. It gave off very much the bromance book club vibe. So if you liked that, then you'll definitely like this book. Best friends to lovers. I just think mostly the whole book I was like infuriated with how blind these 2 characters are. Like, come on, you have to know that she's into you. I gave it 3 stars. I liked how much chemistry they had. So at the end of the day, lighthearted read. And I finished February with Thank You for Listening by Julia Wieland. And I think it's one of my favorite books of all time now. I definitely want to buy a physical copy, but at the same time, I think the magic of it all is because Julia Wieland herself narrates it and she blew it out of the water. Oh my gosh. This is a romance, absolutely, but it also can be considered a contemporary fiction because there was so much going on that wasn't just the romance. It felt like such a well-rounded book. So you follow Swanee. She is an actress, but she had to retire because of something that happened to her. So then she moved on to audiobook narration, and she is doing this project with a very well-known male audiobook narrator. It was done phenomenally. I loved how the romance was handled. I think they had so much chemistry, and I constantly wanted to know what was going to happen between the 2. While I'm rattling on about my books, my dog ate my cat's toy. That's so sad. Ugh, that sucks. I absolutely fell in love with Swanee. I think she has such a big personality. She's very wise and very, very thoughtful about the people around her. And she just articulates herself so beautifully. She's a word nerd. And the author herself is a word nerd. She was just a very well-rounded character. The book touches really beautifully on grieving over not necessarily missed opportunities, but like closed doors and moving forward with your life and really like bridging the identities of who you were, who you are, who you want to be. There's just so much love embedded into the pages of that book. I did not dislike a single part of this book, and the audiobook only makes it better because she just brings them to life. Like, it's hilarious. There are accents involved. She does all of it herself. I think my February reading month started off real strong, and then it dipped a little bit, and I read some okay romances. And then it got really, really good at the end with Thank You for Listening. So I'm very happy with it. I don't think I'm ever going to try and read 18 books in a month ever again. But I had a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that your March got off to a wonderful start, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.